Our next guest is a former Vancouver Canuck, a TSN hockey analyst, and the subject of a fawning feature story this week in the province. Let's welcome back to the show, Mr. Frank Corrado.
Boys, who out-dumpins the Vancouver Canucks?
Nobody.
Nobody.
Outdumps them. Nobody outdumps the Canucks.
They go, some teams go goal for goal. Some teams go hit for hit, shot for shot. Good luck going dump-in for dump-in with the Vancouver Canucks this year.
Also leading the league in jam-in attempts. In non-skilled shot, just jam the pads of the goalie.
Yeah,
league
there was
leaders.
a lot of jamming happening last night. Lots of jam jobs.
Yeah. Good soft dumps in the corner like a toddler.
I don't know that they're even that good at it, to be honest.
Since he doesn't want to talk about Steve Ewan's feature story about him, and by the way, it was agreed with every word, and you threw us some lovely
thank you
compliments.
to Steve. That was very nice.
It was, and Steve is one of the great people in our industry, so I was pleased to see that. No, since you want to talk dump-ins, and I've noticed this on the last few Canucks games, or several recent Canucks games. I don't have all the stats for you, but zone entries last night at even strength. 28 uncontrolled attempts, so that's a lot of dump-ins there. 3 successful. 41 controlled attempts, 35 successful.
Looks like I should carry it in.
You would know better than me, Frank, but like, what percentage of dump-ins are you hoping to recover for possession? And when you are 35-6 on your controlled entries and 3-25 in your uncontrolled entries,
That's pretty damning.
Should that tell you something?
Yes, yeah. I would say, like, if you're dumping the puck in, it's got to be more than 50-50 as far as getting it back. Like,
that's baseline. 50-50 is baseline.
Thanks,
right?
Captain Obvious. Yeah, like, you got to be putting it to somewhere where you actually have a chance to get it back, or else why are you doing it? Like, I would say 70%, 65 to 70% is probably like a realistic good target. But yeah, like it's just a lot of dump it in. It's a lot of, let's try and chase it down. It's there's not a lot of creativity to it right now. And Montreal's first line, like if you had never watched a game of Montreal all season long and you watch those guys play, you're like, okay, Nick Suzuki's a good player, but you don't think of him in, the grand scheme of superstars in the NHL. No. Cole Caulfield's a very good goal scorer, but you probably think of 8, 9, maybe 10 goal scorers.
Didn't make the U.S. team. Like, I mean,
right, like the pure
they're
snipers.
both good young ascending players, but they're not quite at that level yet.
And then Juraj Slafkovsky always gets heat for being the first overall pick that shouldn't have been, right? Oh, he was a victim of the year, and Montreal got stuck with him, and he had a monster of a game last night. So I guess you put that all together, and that first line made plays that aren't just like standard stock plays. They obviously executed, they scored, and Vancouver had no answer for those guys. And that's not McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman. That's not, on paper, Matthews, Marner, Nyes. It's a very good line that had their way with the Canucks last night.
So I want to, believe it or not, ask a second question about dump-ins. This must be the peak dump-in content of our show of all time. But the Tochett system prioritized possession in the offensive zone. We've talked about this many times. He preferred them to hang onto the puck in the offensive zone to look for a high-quality scoring chance rather than just shoot it at the net, the Brind'Amour style, if you will. In part because it was helpful defensively. Every second that you have the puck, the opposition doesn't. How would that logic not extend to controlled entries and carrying the puck in?
I don't know why you wouldn't want to carry it in. Like
you
just would.
It's the scoring instrument. You don't score without the puck. So why voluntarily surrender it as much as the Vancouver Canucks do? And can that system work at the highest levels of the NHL.
We could talk about the Tochett system and how it doesn't necessarily lend to offense as easily as you would like, but regardless of PDO and things that went in last year that weren't going in this year, last year looks different than this year. Like last year, they still made plays within the confines of what they were trying to do. And they aspired to do more that was sustainable last year. They wanted to be better off the rush. They're worse off the rush. Like there's a level of execution that they just haven't hit this year. And like as much as the system isn't necessarily conducive to it as some other ones may be, like Colorado, you also have to have the ponies, and you also have to have the guys that can make the plays, and they don't have that. They have guys that dump the puck in, try and go get it. I also wonder, just from like experience, hearing certain coaches talk about things, turnovers, right? Like so many coaches will harp on, we can't turn it over at the blue line. And if that's something that always comes up, well, guess what guys do when they get close to the blue line? They'll dump the puck in. And like, I can't believe we're still talking about dump ins, but the dump in is something that has to be like premeditated. Like it can't just be, oh, I ran out of options and now I just got to dump this in, because chances are you're just putting it to a defenseman or the goalie. It's like you get over the red line and it's got to be hard, ringed around so the goalie can't get it, and you got two players going on the other side. That was well thought out. With it,
also,
if it's a soft
or
chip
soft
and chase,
and in the corner.
that means you have speed through the middle, and you're putting it in the corner. And someone like Dakota Joshua, similar to what Josh Anderson does for Montreal, is going to go and run someone and try and come out with that puck. But if it's just a last resort thing that you're doing because you're like, got no play, don't want to turn it over, you don't come up with them.
Yeah. Not skilled enough to outmaneuver someone at the blue line, so keep it simple.
And then you're flat-footed as well. So you're right. If it's predetermined and you're crossing center ice going, I'm going to dump it in, you're going to be skating with momentum and speed, versus I got nothing, you dump it in, you're flat-footed, you're not going to get to that puck. There's zero chance you're getting to the puck.
Well, and here's another thing from last night's game, right? So you talk about wanting to play in the offensive zone. That's great. Vancouver, at all strengths, had 7 minutes and 44 seconds of offensive possession time to Montreal's 4 minutes and 30 seconds. High danger scoring chances, with those times being what they were even, 16 to 16. Slot shots, Montreal had 15 slot shots in their 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Vancouver had 9 slot shots in their 7 minutes and 44 seconds. So you can have it all you want in the offensive zone, but if it doesn't get to the dangerous areas, you're just killing the clock. And it's empty. Like it was empty calorie stuff for Vancouver, and you get 2 floaters from the point, and it's like you're in the game, but like that wasn't a sustainable course of action for them to be in games.
They only go to the point. Like they exclusively go to the point, Frank. It is driving me crazy why nobody tries to roll out of the corner, why nobody tries to take the puck to the net. And I realize maybe they just don't have the horses, but they're supposed to. One guy freaking left on the forward set, JT Miller, one guy. Why does it all of a sudden look like the bottom has dropped out of this team? That's to me what I see is a team completely devoid of top-end skill. You talked about that Montreal top line. That top line gets maligned for not being a true top line. A lot of people have accused the Montreal Canadiens of masquerading a top line that's a second line on a lot of other teams. Well, what does that mean for the Canucks top 6, for heaven's sakes? Like, those guys look like wizards.
Yeah. Right. Like that is exact. You're exactly right. Right. Like no one's going to sit here and say, rank the best top lines in the NHL. That line's not coming up. But
no,
like you watch those guys play, like nifty, responsible in their own zone, flip passes to areas, like highlight reel goals. And Vancouver, like when you contrast with what Vancouver was rolling out there, that's not even close. Like there's not that level of creativity. There's not that level of skill right now. And it's hard. Like they're playing at a deficit offensively because they're not doing that type of stuff.
In the third period, the Montreal Canadiens are putting on some pressure on the Canucks. Pettersson is helping out defensively in his own corner, and he stripped, I think, Caulfield of the puck and went between his legs.
I saw
Elias
that.
Pettersson did.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, well, that's really fine and dandy back there, but where the hell is that sort of creativity and maneuvering in the offensive zone? Like, I love that you're showing those handles to get out of trouble in the defensive zone, but can you try something like that, please, offensively?
Well, going back to what we were just talking about with the system and the turnovers, like, coaches have to be able to live with a certain amount of turnovers. Like, you just do. Guys have to be able to make some plays, and they're not always going to be executed properly. You're playing against good defensive teams, good defensive structure. Like, you just can't do it 100% of the time. You do have to be able to stomach a little bit of that. It's when it becomes a habit and it's, really stifling you and it's leading to odd man rushes against, like, that's when you really clamp down on that stuff. But to try and completely eliminate turnovers, like, I think I don't know exactly what they would be talking about, but when you see guys not making the plays, you're like, okay, well, there's an element of, like, I don't want to screw this up. Like, I fear turnovers, and you can't. Like, you have to be a little bit brash offensively.
So you say JT Miller, they subtracted one guy. I would argue that subtracting JT Miller was like subtracting three guys.
Well, apparently.
Because of the outsized effect he had on his wingers. Brock Besser was talking about this yesterday. As we know, Besser's not a speed demon. Besser's not a rough and tumble, go into the corner, take the puck away from someone with physicality. Besser requires a centerman getting him the puck in good areas. And JT was so good as a passer, but also as a finisher himself, that whatever two guys were playing beside him, oftentimes it was Besser, were made better players because of his presence. So I would argue that the JT Miller cascading effect on his line, and then, of course, making things easier for the opposition to match up against the Vancouver Canucks, has actually affected the forward group as an entirety since the deal. Is that fair, Frank, or am I overthinking this?
I think when it's the best version of JT Miller, yes. When it was the JT Miller that could play 15 minutes a night and wasn't producing at 5-on-5, like, you kind of pretty much are where you are now. Like, that's that's the reality of what Miller's year was like in Vancouver, where there were some really good moments. There were some moments where he blended in, and JT Miller's not a guy that can blend in. And now Brock Besser is blending in, and doesn't create that little extra bit of separation because he doesn't have a bulldozer of a centerman who can retrieve and create his separation and get him the puck in good spots. So yeah, like, there is a domino effect of not having a guy like JT Miller when JT Miller is playing at his best. And hindsight is so easy with all these things, because you can go back and say we were expecting him to be the guy he was last year. It wasn't always like that this year.
Yeah, and you're right about hindsight, but I think this was predictable, Frank. Like, this was a team that was struggling to score goals and then traded out one of their better goal catalysts.
Yeah, but what was the better course of action?
Well,
realistic course
it
of
was
action.
Obviously, it was a big picture, long-term view. It was also this isn't working with him and Pettersson, and this is ultimately going to have to happen. So I do think they resigned themselves to some short-term pain on the offensive side of things with JT moving out JT. But I also think they felt like they could be better defensively, and that's where first period last night, and even as the game went on a little beyond the score effects, boy, they gave up a lot last night. Like, it looked pretty easy for Montreal
to a non-acclaimed top line, as we talked about.
Well, and okay, so you give up one play that leads to a breakaway where, like, the puck is in the offensive zone, it's a good play by Slafkovsky, but it's just like a regular play where someone just kind of leans against the board, something gets blocked. It shouldn't go from that to a breakaway in 2 seconds. The other one, the Caulfield goal on the 2-on-1, that should never go from quick up to 2-on-1. Like there's just, you're right, defensively, they are a better defensive team than that, or they should be anyways, because if you're not going to score, you better defend with some layers and make it difficult. But that was like one pass can't lead to a 2-on-1. I'm sorry. Like that can't be happening.
By the way,
Okay, let's move on.
The giveaway leaders in the league, you're talking about how sometimes you just have to put up with a skilled player taking it to the house. Giveaway leaders in the league: Nathan McKinnon, Nikita Kucherov, David Pasternak, Philip Forsberg, Mitch Marner, Jack Hughes. I'll keep on going. Skilled players.
Yeah, no, of course.
They're going to try some shit.
They have the most
exactly.
touches, and they, absolutely. No, it stands to...
Hey, let me ask you guys a question.
Reason. It's like starting goaltenders are going to have more losses because they're in the net more. Okay, ask your question.
Okay, what'd you think of Lane Hutson? Like, do you see, like, you saw Quinn Hughes as a young kid, like, guy's the real deal, is he not?
Yeah, it's there for sure. Yeah.
I can't believe he lasted to the end of the second round. Like,
yeah.
You see what Hughes does. How is it?
Well, the rookie seasons are almost
There's
identical.
a bias against that guy.
I know the rookie seasons are identical. He's going to blow past what Seider did when he won Rookie of the Year. Like every time Hutson reaches a new milestone, it's like he's passing Lidstrom or Chelios or Larry Murphy. It's remarkable.
That tracks.
And,
for defensemen, that's unheard of in the second round.
But those were the sorts of names and company that Hughes was keeping
exactly.
as he hit all
I
these
just
milestones.
think there's a lot of similarities between those two guys. Like Hughes is a little more explosive, but Hutson is so elusive and competes so hard for such a young small guy.
Let's use that as a segue. What does Hughes do to the Canucks tonight, assuming he plays?
Is he playing? Have they announced that?
That's the assumption.
I hinted strongly at he is making the trim.
Well,
how much of a difference?
Well, when he's on the ice, they'll have some creativity, they'll have some speed, they'll have some playmaking that isn't just stock dump and chase or I don't know, 3-on-3 rush type stuff. Like he's going to do stuff that isn't exactly in the box playbook, so it looks different and it becomes unpredictable for the opponent. When he's not on the ice, it'll look very similar to what you have seen the last little while, when it's stifled. And he's not the kind of guy that is going to jump in and play it safe or be conservative. Like, he's coming to play if he's going to play. And he's the kind of guy that completely changes the complexion of the game, and the Canucks desperately need to have that in the lineup right now.
What are they up against in Calgary? Also a team that doesn't score a lot and a team that seemingly has been riding this extraordinary rookie season from goaltender Dustin Wolf.
You see, but Calgary actually defends pretty well. Like, as you know, they're not world beaters defensively, but they are pretty good defensively, and Dustin Wolf is a big part of that for sure. But they're pretty stingy for a team that wasn't supposed to be this good coming into the season, and like they don't score either. So tonight it's a battle of like, who can get a lead? Can you get a 2-0 lead in this game? Because if you can lock it down, the other team is going to have a hard time doing something that is, unordinary offensively. So I think like the first goal is important, the next goal is important, and similar to last night, where Montreal is somewhat similar to these teams as well, where they have been guilty of giving up a lot. There have been times where they don't necessarily score as much, like they're scoring more now, but they got that 3-0 lead, and in that whole second period, you're like, it's pretty much over. Like I don't know. Outside of the two floaters, it never felt overly. It never felt like Vancouver was overwhelming. It didn't feel like there was this massive push. It was just you got 2 goals because the goalie didn't play great. Well, in Calgary, the goalie's going to play great. He just is. He's been like that all season long, and they're a pretty good team defensively. So playing with the lead tonight, is going to be huge for whichever team is able to do it.
Yeah. We started talking about this week. We feel like it's the dead puck era. First goal is so meaningful.
Yeah, soccer on ice.
Yeah, some
Score a
teams
goal.
are playing that. Colorado ain't playing that. Colorado is not playing that. They are playing like run. Okay, I'm not going to call it run and gun, but
play that way.
high octane offensive hockey is what Colorado is playing. It's what Dallas is going to be playing. There's some teams that are playing dead puck hockey.
Yeah, well, when you got guys who can skate like McKinnon, Natchez, McCarr,
let them go.
Have you ever seen a player go to a team and fit in like perfectly like Natchez has in Colorado? Yeah. It was like he was made to be on that team.
They're pretty smart guys there in Colorado. They hold the line on contracts, and they understand the profile of players they're looking for.
They didn't change much losing Rantanen, and he's a lot cheaper than Rantanen.
Well,
so
and so
them to do
like,
a lot of other things.
No one would argue that Rantanen's a better player than Natchez, but the fit for Natchez in Colorado makes it like you still get the same impact. And you get it for way cheaper. It's unbelievable. Like when it's all said and done and the dust has settled on that, that was brilliant by Colorado.
Well, and there could be two winners there too, because that's quite a haul that Carolina got as well. And look, I understand they may not be as strong in this postseason run, but they believe in taking cracks year after year after year, and one day you'll knock the door down. So we'll see how they redeploy some of those assets and what becomes of the Hurricanes after this deal. Awesome stuff, Frank. Thank you for this. Once again, for those who missed the story from Steve Ewan in the province, check it out. And we'll catch up next week.
See you, boys.
Okay. You have some good soft dumps between now and then.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.